Before we dive into the episode, I just wanted to let you know that the Moms Behind the Mic Audio Summit is officially open for registration. If you're a mom entrepreneur who wants to launch, grow, or monetize your podcast without overwhelm, this is for you. The event is audio only, packed with expert strategies, and designed to fit into your actual life. You can grab your free ticket by going to momsbehindthemic.com, and I'll see you there. Can we talk about something that no one warns you about when you start a podcast? It's not the mic. It's not the editing. It's not even the downloads. It's the invisible work. The work that no one sees. The work that no one claps for. The work that slowly drains you even when your podcast is technically, quote unquote, doing fine. If your podcast feels heavier than it should, then this episode is going to hit. Welcome to Podcasting for Moms, the show for moms in business ready to start, grow, and scale a podcast that turns their listeners into buyers. I'm Jenny Soneson, a podcast strategist and fellow mom entrepreneur. You're in the right place if you want to learn how to start and grow a podcast that attracts your ideal clients and really does the heavy lifting for you when it comes to selling your offers, all while balancing life as a busy mom. Are you ready to create a podcast that grows your income, impact, and influence? Let's make podcasting work for you because as moms, we know how to get things done. All right, let's jump into the episode. Hey, and welcome back to Podcasting for Moms, the place for mom podcasters who want to build profitable, sustainable, lead-generating podcasts in part-time hours. And today, we are talking about the invisible work of podcasting and why it's exhausting you more than you realize. Because I see this constantly, and if we don't address it, it is one of the fastest paths to burnout. So when most people think about podcasting, they think about recording, editing, publishing, and posting on social media. That is the visible work. But there's also invisible work, and it looks like this. The mental load of always thinking about your next episode, the pressure to be on every time you hit record, the constant questioning, is this good enough? Is this valuable? Is anyone even listening? The time spent planning, outlining, recording, and overthinking. The emotional labor of sharing personal stories, the quiet disappointment when your downloads don't spike, and the energy of staying consistent even when you're tired. No one sees that part, but it's heavy. And when you're a mom, you're already carrying invisible work at home. So now you've layered invisible business work on top of invisible motherhood work. Of course you're exhausted. Podcasting isn't just a task, it is a creative output. And creative output pulls from your brain, your emotions, your lived experiences, your confidence, and your nervous system. You're not just recording, you're deciding, you're teaching, you're positioning yourself, you're leading, you're selling, even if subtly. You're holding space, and that's leadership energy. And leadership energy without systems, without support, and without boundaries, it'll drain you fast, especially if your podcast isn't clearly connected to the revenue, because then you're pouring all this invisible effort into something that feels unreciprocated. And that is when resentment begins to creep in. So you may be wondering the real reason why it's exhausting you. And it's not the podcast, it's the lack of structure around your podcast. When your show is random, disconnected from your offers, created week to week, dependent on motivation, and built without a clear strategy, then you're recreating the wheel every single episode, and that is exhausting. But when your podcast becomes a visibility engine, a content repurposing hub, a sales support tool, a relationship builder, and a strategic asset, that's when the invisible work decreases, because now it has direction. Now you're not just creating to create, you're building something, and there's a difference there. So let's say this part out loud. Podcasting can feel really lonely. You record alone, you publish alone, you market alone. You don't always get feedback from people. You don't always get feedback from your listeners, and you don't always see results immediately. You can be showing up consistently for months before you start to feel traction. And when you're already stretched thin in motherhood, the extra emotional weight hits a lot harder. You start thinking things like, maybe this isn't working, or maybe I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I should just stop. And so many mom podcasters quit here. Not because they're not capable, but because the invisible work piled up without a release valve. So here's the hopeful part. We don't eliminate invisible work, but we can reduce the unnecessary kind. So here's how. First, you want to attach your podcast to revenue. If your podcast isn't clearly connected to an offer, it's going to eventually feel like a hobby. And while hobbies are fun, businesses need purpose. So your podcast should nurture your leads, pre-sell your offers, shorten your sales cycle, and build authority intentionally. When you see sales tied to your episodes, then energy shifts. The second thing you want to do to make it lighter is to create repeatable frameworks. So stop reinventing the wheel every single episode. Have 3 to 5 core content pillars, repeatable episode formats, a seasonal strategy, and clear calls to action that you rotate. Structure reduces decision fatigue. Then you want to batch with boundaries. So don't record when you're emotionally depleted. Batch when you have that creative energy and rest when you don't. Consistency doesn't require constant creation. And lastly, you just got to stop performing. You don't need to sound perfect. You don't need to sound polished. You don't need to overteach. You need clarity, conviction, and alignment. That's it. And there was a season where I felt like my podcast was heavier than it should have felt. I was consistent, I was showing up, but I was creating without a clear funnel behind it. And every episode felt like I was starting over, every call to action felt really random, and every week required so much mental load from me. But once I simplified the strategy and aligned episodes with offers, that exhaustion dropped dramatically. I was producing the same amount of content, but I had half the mental drain. That's the difference strategy makes. So if your podcast feels exhausting right now, I want you to hear this. It's not because you're bad. It's not because you're bad at it or because podcasting doesn't work. It's because invisible work without structure feels really heavy. And as a mom, you're already carrying enough. Your podcast should support your life, not compete with it. And if this episode hit, if you're realizing your show might be working harder than it needs to, I would love to help you simplify it. Whether that's through my frameworks, my programs, or even just auditing your structure, there's a lighter way to do this. And you deserve a podcast that builds your business without burning you out. If you want to learn more about how to work together, I'll leave the links down below, and I will see you next week. Thank you for tuning into Podcasting for Moms. I hope today's episode gave you the tools and inspiration you need to make your podcast work smarter, not harder. If you love what you heard, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. It means the world and helps other moms in business find the show. For more tips, resources, and support, head to podcastingformoms.co. Remember, you're not just building a podcast, you're building your legacy. Until next time, friends.